right, the Schilling Show continues. Always lots going on at UVA. Unfortunately, most of it's not good. We have an expert on the subject. Joel Gardner is the president of the Jefferson Council, and today's topic, the search for transparency at UVA. Hey, Joel, welcome back to the Schilling Show.
Thanks, Rob. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
We have a new rector and vice rector at the University of Virginia. These changes very recent. I'd love for you to tell us how come the old rector and the old vice rector are gone now, in your opinion.
Well, I think the old rector and the old vice rector are gone because they were the leaders of a board that had been appointed by a Republican governor and that was aspiring to make some changes in terms of the way the university was run, and that they were not in full agreement with what had been the agenda that was put forth and was being executed by Jim Ryan and Robert Hardy. So the new administration coming in was trying to find a way to take over control of the university as quickly as possible. According to tradition, according to history, the boards that had been appointed by a prior governor were actually in control of the Board of Visitors for at least 2 years after a new administration came in. And there was a plan put into effect. We have called it the cabal, but there are many, many participants in the cabal, which included the old members of the old board, the former administration, certain alumni, members of the faculty, certain student groups who did not like the policies that the Republican-controlled Board of Visitors may have implemented. And it all came to a head with DEI, which was voted unanimously to get rid of, including the Democrats. But it was really the entrance of the Justice Department which brought it to the fore. And that's why I think ultimately was the reason they got rid of, or they used excuses to get rid of the rector and the vice rector. They wanted to get rid of as many as possible. And in a totally unprecedented actions, things that had never occurred in the history of the Commonwealth, the General Assembly first refused to approve 5 appointees that Governor Youngkin had made. And then upon assuming office, or it was even the day before, I think, they demanded the resignations of 5 more. So on day one, Governor Spanberger was going to be able to appoint 10 people to the board, 10 of 17, and immediately take control of the board. The rector and vice rector became villains. They became kind of the figureheads of the old board. And why? Because they had, in fact, negotiated with the Justice Department. Look, someone had to.
Right.
The Justice Department was investigating the university, was threatening severe penalties to the university. And so Rachel Sheridan, who at that point wasn't the rector yet, she was truly the rector in waiting, but Robert Hardy did not negotiate with the Justice Department. And it had to fall on someone. It fell on Rachel. And Rachel, who is a lawyer at one of the largest firms in the country, a very accomplished and well-thought-out lawyer, got involved in those negotiations. And, in fact, Paul Mahoney, who was the acting president after Jim Ryan resigned, I mean, he and her participation resulted in what was probably the most favorable settlement that any university in the country that was being investigated had reached with the Justice Department. No penalties, either from the past or going forward. But they were gone because they were the leaders of a Republican board that a whole group of people wanted to remove. And it's never been nothing like this, even remotely like this had ever happened in the Commonwealth. And I don't think that the mainstream media, the press, whatever, has really focused enough on how extraordinary and political that move was. And it's funny because the other side constantly says that the Republican board was political. And, you know, a lot of us thought that that board was not active enough. I wouldn't say political. I mean, it's trying to reduce the university budget, political. It's trying to find accountability for the administration, political. It's trying to avoid scandals, political. I don't think so. I mean, there were things that members of that board were trying to do that would benefit the entire university community, except for possibly the bloated and enormous bureaucracy, the administrative bureaucracy. So they weren't political at all. And in fact, one of the most shocking of all of the first denial and then demanding the resignations of the 10 was Paul Manning. I mean, can you find another university in the United States where someone who had given $100 million to the university for a whole new scientific center was pushed off the board? And anybody, I don't know Paul personally well, but many of my friends and friends on the board did know Paul well. And it's hard to find someone who is more of a decent person and less really political than Paul Manning was. Except his crime, apparently, was he disagreed with some of the events surrounding Jim Ryan's resignation. Jim stated a certain view, and Paul apparently had a different view surrounding his resignation. And just disagreeing with Jim Ryan was enough to get this distinguished and incredibly generous alum, or he's not an alum actually, he's not even an alum, he's a member of our community, member of the Charlottesville community, off the board. Shocking and amazing. Again, nobody in the media really focuses on what a reckless and horrible precedent was implemented by this group, including the governor, upon taking her office.
It is really unbelievable, and I think you make some very good points, because the sort of reporting that I'm hearing on this is leaving out the whole backstory. The reporting is those, the rector and vice rector just resigned, and the other people just resigned, as if they were making some sort of statement against the incoming governor, when exactly the opposite was true. It's just not being reported that way. All right, let's go to the break. We're talking with Joel Gardner, president of the Jefferson Council. Search for transparency at UVA. We may be waiting a long time, but we still got to search. Stay with the Schilling Show. Final segment ahead. All right, the Schilling Show into our final segment, continuing conversation with Joel Gardner, the president of the Jefferson Council. We're talking about things going on at UVA. And I'm going to make a comment. You're free to just move on to the rest of the interview if you don't want to comment. But I feel like we had a 4-year window to really do something good. We had the people in place. It's just that something fell apart along the way, probably starting with Bert Ellis's dismissal. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but it seems to me like we're not going to get this opportunity again.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right. It's going to be a while, or we may never get the opportunity in place. But there's a number of factors, Rob, contributing to your comment. One of the major factors is we didn't have all the right people in place. And that problem rests in the governor's office. And I'll tell you a story I don't think we've ever discussed before.
Yeah.
But right after the governor was elected, I've been a pretty active alum. I published a number of articles. And so my name was out there. And I was approached by one of the leaders of the governor's search committee to find board members. And he called me early on and to find out whether I might be interested in serving on the board. And one of the things that, multiple things he said was that, look, the governor recognizes that there are a lot of material changes that should be made at the university. And a lot of these revolved around the budget and how ideologies were being pushed by the administration. And he said, we know that we need people on the board who are going to be activists in getting these changes done. He said, typically, he said, board members have been appointed people who are political allies or big donors or friends and family. And they got on the board because they enjoyed sitting in the president's box at football games and going to dinners and events. So this is not what we're going to do with this board. We're going to appoint people who are very knowledgeable about what's going on and who are going to be dedicated to getting things done. Well, unfortunately, there were very, very few of the members of the board that the governor chose that fitted that. Most of them actually fitted into the categories which they said they weren't going to appoint. They were big donors, they were political allies, or they were friends and family. So we did, first of all, to begin with, we did not have the right people on the board to actually have material change, because it is very difficult. I mean, UVA is a swamp. It's a bureaucratic swamp. And particularly, as I mentioned before, for the first 2 years, the choices weren't, the Republican governor's choices weren't going to be in control of the board anyway.
Yeah.
But they would have to be people willing to get on their hind legs and speak up. And we just didn't have many. Now, one of them who did fit that category was Bert Ellis.
Yes.
And it's for that very reason, because Bert was willing to speak out and try to get things done. He was marginalized by the administration and Robert Hardy, the leader of the board, the rector of the board, and they targeted him as an enemy.
Yeah.
And they were going to target anybody else who might be an activist on the board. And I know that personally, and we can talk about that another time.
Yeah.
But people should read, and this is, again, I mentioned this, I think, the last time. The Washington Post released, they got a hold of and released 940 some odd pages of texts that were FOIA'd by another individual. And they were FOIA'd from board members. And about a quarter or a third of those texts are from Robert Hardy. And what's disclosed in those texts are incredible and shameful, and shows how truly what a vulgar and manipulative person he was, and someone who was just not willing to countenance any dissenting voices, and that would use everything in their power to crush any dissenting voices. That is the person we have leading. And if you think I'm making conclusory statements, I just suggest that anybody who's truly interested is read those texts. And we, the Jefferson Council, we've been, unfortunately, working on some other matters, because every other day there's something that requires our attention.
Yes.
But we are going to put out a series of articles detailing what was said and done by the former leaders of our Board of Visitors. And for anybody who believes in freedom of expression and respecting diverse opinions it will be shocking. And also, and this will go back now to what we're talking about, transparency, which has been a major issue for the past administration, probably the least transparent in the history, and also sat over and watched as some of the greatest scandals in the history of the university were taking place. Their primary interest was in covering up these scandals rather than allowing the truth to be told to the public and to the university community. I mean, I could just pick out one text from the 900 some odd pages. It was after the tragedies, I will say tragedies, in the healthcare system were made public. And when the scandal was first being brought to the public's attention by the 128, I believe it is, doctors who signed the letter saying there were bad things going on, when that came to Robert Hardy's attention, his first reaction wasn't, hey, let's get the truth, let's find the truth, we've got to investigate this. His first reaction is, and I'm going to quote from what he said in his test, I spoke to Jim. He agrees we need a PR firm and a communication strategy. That's what they were most interested in. CYA, which I think people know what that acronym means.
That's right.
And protecting themselves for their feckless leadership rather than trying to get to the truth of what over 100 doctors were saying that was going on. In fact, they never tried to get to the truth. And when they finally were forced to bring in an independent counsel, they never released the independent counsel report, and they never addressed specifically any of the allegations. But we know the results of that report because all the leaders of the healthcare system resigned shortly thereafter.
Yes, indeed. We're just about out of time, and this is such important information. I know you've got a lot more information online, so tell us how people can visit the Jefferson Council and also can support your efforts.
Yeah, the best way to find out what's really going on at this university and to get into the weeds is you can go to our website, which is jeffersoncouncil.org, and sign up for our Friday afternoon updates. Every Friday afternoon, we send out to our list of thousands and thousands of interested parties. Those are alums and parents and faculty and students who've signed up, and they get our weekly newsletter, which, part of the reason that this administration under Jim Ryan was able to get away with what they did is because so few people are interested enough to try to find out the truth. They figured that out early on, that just by creating this attractive persona, by running with the students, by glad-handing people, by showing up at dinners and whatever, that they would create a attractive persona that would withstand people actually trying to find out what was truly going on. And a lot of this resulted in tragedy.
It certainly did. Joel, so much more to the story, and we look forward to the next conversation. But thank you, as always, for joining us today on The Schilling Show. Really appreciate it.
Okay, it was great talking to you, Rob.
Thank you so much. And that's going to wrap up today's edition of The Schilling Show, this Manic Monday. It's in the books now.